341. Welcome to yet another lesson in a series of lessons this term. Today we will be talking about frequency, tone, and length. And I want to just thank Chilin Shi for making some of these lecture materials available. All right, so without further ado, and I think Chilin Shi is a Chinese linguist at the University of Illinois. I'm not sure. I don't quote me on that. Anyways, so yeah, without further ado, I want to present to you a slideshow, just like this, of suprasegmentals. So frequency, tone, and length are suprasegmentals, and suprasegmentals are defined as phonetic features of speech which are above the segment. These are tone, accent, intonation, quantity, and stress. Today we will be talking about tone, pitch accent, not accent per se, and quantity. We will leave stress for the next lecture, and the intonation is something that involves all of these, but it's a little bit different, and it is characteristic of a phrase or a whole utterance, so we won't be talking about intonation today. All right, so suprasegmental features are established by comparison of items in sequence, which was said by Ilse Lehiste. I think she was originally from Slovenia. She's a very famous suprasegmentalist, and suprasegmental features are always defined in a relative matter. So what does this all mean? You can think about suprasegmental features that go on top of segmental features. So they work differently from segmental, such as, for example, b, a, sh, z, right? Or for example, any velar stop, k, g. With respect to those stops, I can, let's say, raise the tongue, the back of the tongue towards soft palate, or what is called velum, and hit the target and stop the airflow for a brief fragment of time. Suprasegmental features work in the way that that you superimpose them on top of the segments that you're producing, and they are aligned with segments in time, and they are all relative. Segments are less gradient in this way, so they are more categorical, meaning if you hear the sound b, the majority of you will say that's b, right? But suprasegmental, such as tone, if you hear some tone, the majority of you will say, for example, for the tone, that it might be high, it might be low. It's up to us to decide, is the majority rule in a way. So the decision whether this tone is low or high will be more difficult, because you need to base your decision on some previous experience with tones and some previous tone. For example, if I say or then you might say, okay, well, he is obviously making the first one low and the second one high, but they are relative to each other, right? And that's what we mean when we say suprasegmental features are established by comparison of items in a sequence. And that's well said by Ilse or Ilse Lehiste. Suprasegmental features are researched a lot, right? And someone who does the research on suprasegmental features struggles to explain to, let's say, syntacticians or non-experts why tone is low and why another tone is high, for example. Why some tone is low, why some tone is high. But as phoneticians and students of Link 341, you should be able, after this lesson at least, to describe and understand suprasegmentals. Try to remember at all points that suprasegmentals relate to objective reality, to something that we all acoustically described as a fundamental frequency, but they are relatively perceived, so they are perceived in a different way, right? And as I said, they relate and they correspond to objectively real fundamental frequency, which we talked about last time. So let's say we want to talk about tone, right? Right. Where does tone come from? We know by now that this is a waveform, right? And that it shows the change in pressure of air through time, right? The spikes denote the greatest pressure peak or the greatest pressure or the peak amplitudes, and most likely one cycle needed for the molecules of air to transmit the energy further, right? So most likely this is one cycle, another cycle, third cycle, right? Fourth cycle. But there are some smaller spikes around here, and it's a complex wave in essentially, so it's not so easy to determine this, right? But this acoustic shock wave, and deliberately we call it shock wave, of each opening of the vocal folds shows up as a vertical bar in the waveform. So as a vertical bar, one vertical bar, another vertical bar, and so on. So many vertical bars here. These are called a voicing bar, or one of these is called voicing bar or glottal pulse. Call them whichever way you want, but these are the two most common ways. And let me show you. So this is Dr. Winter saying, right? And it's just a regular way of saying, right? Let me now try. I'll try to show this. Show you the same thing as I produce it. Okay. So I'll say, all right, that's good. Nice. So I want to show you this, right? Here I have two things, or let me remove this one. I can even remove the spectrum, right? I only want this one, right? For now. So this is a waveform, right? And this is a waveform of me saying, right? These vertical bars are called voicing bars or glottal pulses. Pratt calls them pulses. And if I click on show pulses, it will show me the pulses, right? It will show each individual pulse, which corresponds to the spike of the air pressure. And Pratt is pretty consistent with those. That is, Pratt does good job with this periodic sound wave. It is still complex, but periodic, because the cycles repeat in the same pattern, so to say, in the same fashion. And the Pratt or the program can read them very well, right? So these are called glottal bars or glottal pulses, something similar to the pulse that you are measuring in your hand, right? Like you want to check whether it's some pressure of blood or blood pressure in your body going through your veins, and it should be there because you want to feel alive, right? And you want to have some pulse. In the same manner, this is the pulse when we are speaking and when we are saying a simple sound, speech sound, right? But these pulses are just the pulses of showing the air pressure instead of blood pressure. Okay, so as I said, this can be one cycle, another cycle, third cycle, fourth cycle, fifth cycle. It's fairly easy to calculate these with Pratt. But what I want to show you as well, so these are pulses, right? What I want to show you as well is maybe to record a sound which will be which will have different pulses, or it will actually have pulses that are more squeezed or less spread, and those pulses that are more spread. Let's try and do this. Let's see how successful I was. All right, so here it goes. As you can see, the pulses of the first one in comparison to the second one are much more squeezed. meaning that the cycles are repeating at a faster rate, right? Cycles and the openings and closings of vocal folds are faster at a higher frequency, and that's why higher the frequency, higher the pitch, or higher the sound that you think I'm producing. And if you compare this sound to that sound, you will hear that this one is generally higher. And now you know where this difference comes from. Now you know how to explain to other human beings, sorry about that, that this is low and this is high, right? Because of the vocal folds openings and closings constantly, right? And we can measure these by calculating the pulses. Okay, I'll be back, right? As Schwarzenegger says, I'll be back to this waveform after I show you the voicing bar close up. And these are just I don't know, let's say 20 voicing bars with individual glottal pulses shown close up. Right? And as I said, these are called pulses because those spikes indicate each pulse or each opening that you make with your voice, or with your vocal folds. But voicing bars really close up right now show that this is a complex wave. So this can be one cycle, right? But the wave is complex, although repetitive, and that's why we call it periodic. It's not aperiodic, it's periodic but complex, and it's not really a sine wave, right? And the fundamental frequency of voicing can be calculated by measuring the period between glottal pulses. So if I measure the period here between these two glottal pulses, I can then measure the fundamental frequency, because now I know that the fundamental frequency is actually 1 through period, right? And in this case, period would be 0.1 seconds, so the frequency would be how much? Let me calculate, or you can do it on your own probably. This is fairly easy, so 1 divided by 0.01, and that's 100, right? So we have a frequency of speech, of voicing, of 100 hertz, right? Remember, fundamental frequency is expressed in hertz, or cycles per second, so CPS, but very rarely we say CPS. All right, I don't want to forget anything, so these are the voicing bars, glottal pulses, call them whichever way you want. Pratt has a feature of viewing and measuring one's fundamental frequency at a specific point in time, right? So we have F0 measurement here at a specific point in time. I will show you again what I have here. Maybe the second one is better, right? This one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the spectrogram. So this lower half is called spectrogram, and this upper half is called waveform. I will remove the pulses for now, but you should know that as the pulses here are squeezed, let's say that between each pulse less time is needed, right? Less time, because they're very squeezed, they're not spread out. And if we say, for the sake of argument, we want to say that between each pulse, between each opening and closing of the vocal folds, there is 0.001 second, right? Now, if we divide 0.01, it will be 1000 hertz, which is not actually the number that I have here, but for the sake of the argument, let's say it like that. And for this part here, you can see that they are not as squeezed. The blue is not almost completely spread out through this waveform, but there are certain little spaces between those, right? And if we take, for example, well, I can measure it this way. It might not be as precise as broad, as what I'm going to show you in a minute, but that's okay. It's 0.01. So here it should be, at least the majority of my repetitions should be actually at a frequency of 100 hertz, because 1 divided by 0.01 is 100 hertz, right? All right, let me do the same way for this one here. I'll grab something in the middle and yeah. Okay, pulses here are not most precise, 0.007, which will mean for me, okay, I lost the calculator again and I need it. Okay, so the calculator in this case, 1 divided by 0.007 is equal to 142. So my frequency on this one is 142, so around that number, and for this one to the right is 100 hertz, right? Or the majority of this one, like this part here and this part here. Okay, now what I wanted to show you is that Prod has an inbuilt function called pitch tracker. So Prod has a function called pitch tracker, and if I click on show pitch, it will show me this blue line here, right? The blue line is called a pitch track. So pay attention to memorize this, that the blue line is called a pitch track and the function is called the pitch tracker, right? Now, I have here some settings of the pitch, right? Pitch settings. And I will show you this right away. I'll remove the pulses and I'll show you this right away. Pitch settings are set to 75 hertz. This is the minimum range, the minimum range of my vocal folds opening and closing, and 300 hertz. I'm okay with 300 hertz. I think I'm not going above that range, but the lower range is a little bit low for you to see everything very well. So what I'm going to do is reduce it to 50 hertz. And what I got is something weird, so it's not good. I'll tell you later why. What I might do is try 60 hertz. No, not good. And you have to bear in mind that this is a program. It's not so precise. So 75 hertz or maybe 70. Let me try 70 is the best one to view, because if you're making a sound that is periodic, you're likely to get the blue line or pitch track or fundamental frequency again, quite monotonous, right? No changes, no drastic changes on it. So what I'm going to do, maybe grab this part here and get pitch, just to see whether my calculations were somewhere in the ballpark. And yeah, I calculated like 140 and it's 135 more precisely. So that's how pulses, glottal pulses or the voicing bars are related to fundamental frequency, and how fundamental frequency is important, which we will see in a second as well. And here, my fundamental frequency of this part, let's grab this part, is 86, so I was very precise here. I calculated around 85, right? Or something like that. But the Pratt program calculated it for me, right? It just grabs each cycle and averages it out, right? So calculates the average. Yeah, that was pitch. And here I wanted to say that I will be using interchangeably for now fundamental frequency and pitch, but you should know the difference, and you will find out the difference in a second. Oops. So pitch is measured by measuring the fundamental frequency at every step in a sound file. So as I said, every glottal pulse. Time is shown on the spectrogram on the x-axis, and fundamental frequency on the y-axis. And this is a recording, an English recording of a female person saying, "I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon." So this person actually, with her sentence, changes pitch a lot. So she changes fundamental frequency, and that's how we speak in general. We don't say and then not change our frequency. We also don't say sentences like this. So let's hear it first.
I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon.
We wouldn't say, "I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon," with the same pitch, because that would be robotic. That's why robots, we're trying to make robots speak like us, but fundamental frequency and implementing this fundamental frequency into speech program, into AI of speech, is quite difficult. So we are not really successful in that so far. Although Siri does a very good job of it. And it's getting much better as they're listening to all that we are speaking, and they are getting data from us. But it's still not, we're still not at that point when we can emulate a person, because people have different emotions. People say sentences with different F0, with different glottal pulsing, with different cycles, or with the different number of cycles that is necessary for you to open and close your vocal folds. Anyways, this person has a pretty high, so if you could see the range here, perhaps it is at 75 hertz and 500 hertz. So the lower range is at 75 hertz. The higher range is at 500 hertz, because for female persons, or for females, they usually tend to have higher frequency ranges because of the vocal fold specifications, which we talked about in previous lessons. So you should be aware of that when you're setting up your prod or pitch settings. So if I set it up, as I said, to to 75 hertz, let's try 75 and 500 hertz. 500 hertz is quite high for me, so I might get a very bad reading or a poor reading of this one. You see, it still reads it well, but it might be quite poor if you don't set the pitch properly. I might get something better with 400, because you're reducing the spectrum here. And I might get even better at 300. Let me see what I can get with 250. Okay, still good. And okay, I'll go even down low. Okay, yeah. Now it seems like I'm really high here, but I'm not really. It's around 135 hertz. And here it seems that I'm not as low as I am actually, at around 86 hertz. So you should be careful when you're setting the pitch. Set it to your range if you're producing something, or set it to the range, the proper range when you're listening to a person. So if I maybe record the sentence, "I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon." Okay, let me give it a shot. All right. "I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon." All right, I was yelling a little bit, but that's okay. And look at my pitch. It's quite chaotic, so to say. I'll set it to 75 and 300 so that I avoid any sort of weird moments here. So let's hear it out. "I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon." Yeah, this here one is not really good, because my voice goes lower but it happens with Prat, and I'll have to prepare you for that. So what I'm going to do maybe is reduce it to 60. Let's see how that goes. Maybe I am raising my voice because I was yelling. That's different. Let's see, 50. 50. Okay, so it's pretty good. I'd like to collect seashells this afternoon. Yeah, maybe because of this air, it read it as higher, as a higher end. Anyways, the frequency or the fundamental frequency of my voice changes, and it's typically in English language and in many languages in the world that the beginning of a sentence will always have a higher frequency than the end of the sentence, especially if the sentence is just an information, a broad information. For example, I'd like to collect seashells, right? If you're asking a question, such as yes or no question, the intonation might change. For example, are you going home? And then I have a higher fundamental frequency at the end. So it varies, right? And it's very important to understand its relativity, right? And that's why we are talking so much about it at this point. Right, so this person, as I said, is speaking English. I spoke English right now with a foreign accent though, but you will be listening to some non-English recordings. So it's good for you. It would be great for you to get used to that and to set pitch or set the prod to certain settings that you need to set it, and to understand that it's quite relative. Okay, I want to cancel it. It's quite relative. Fundamental frequency is very relative to what you see here. For example, this one is high, right, in comparison to this one, but this one is also high in comparison to that one. Yeah, and what I need to also bring to your attention is that there are certain gaps here. The gaps usually occur in voiceless sounds and in obstruents. Okay, so voiceless sounds and obstruents, which can interfere with the recording or with the pitch track, as you're not producing vocal pulses or glottal pulses and vocal voice bars, because your vocal cords are not doing anything at that moment, that brief moment, right, of time. And that's why there are no blue lines, there are no continuous blue lines on this pitch track. All right, I hope you understand this, and I hope hopefully this makes sense to you. Now, also, as I said, sometimes Prat can double or have the correct fundamental frequency. I think you saw it. I showed it to you by accident though, but you saw it here. Yeah, maybe here. Okay, so for this one, if I do not set the pitch settings properly, for this one it's good, 50 and 300. If I set it to 75 hertz, it's good, still good. Okay, let me set it to 100 hertz. Wow, still good, nice. Okay, let me try and reduce it to 40. Yeah, there's some weird readings here, but okay, I'm not getting what I want to get. Maybe 120. Yeah, for example, for 120 it could not read the majority of it, so it's beyond the level, the lower level, the lower limit of my voice. 30, let's see, with 30 is good still, so it's capturing it very well. Let me try with this one. Okay, here, yeah, nice. So I have it here, and if you see in a sound such as which is quite steady, no change in voicing so much, If you see this, and something is not wrong, something is not good, so something is wrong, right, with prot, and it's likely that you have wrong settings on it. So let's say 75 again. Okay, this works, right? And pay attention to those features of prot because they will become useful further on. In general, prot really works well. That's why I'm bothering you so much with this, and that's why I'm so persistent with showing you what it can do. It captures fundamental frequency very well, and we will now find out why this is important for us, right? Okay, so yeah, generally, I just want to mention here, generally 75 to 500 hertz for females, and for male persons maybe 75 or 50, right? Sometimes you can go to 100 for males, but this is okay. 50, 75 to 300 or 400 if somebody has a high voice. You'll have to decide on that, right? So that you can view and observe the movement of our vocal folds in this awesome program, right? In 441 you will learn technical reasons why prot is doing these doublings and halvings, if that's a word, but hopefully you get the gist, right? Finally, we come to what is important to us, and that's tone. Tone is the linguistic use of fundamental frequency, and acoustically we measure fundamental frequency, the greatest common denominator of a complex wave, and the concept which tells us how many times a second our vocal folds open and close. That's fundamental frequency, or as we call it, F0. Yes, so this is an acoustic term and it's real, right? It's out there. If you were to maybe morbidly cut your head like this and just take a look from the above, as I'm, for example, taking a look into this glass from the above, your vocal folds, while you're saying ah, eh, and voices and vowels like that, you would see the vibrations of the vocal folds, and those vibrations produce what we call fundamental frequency. That is, the vocal folds are opening and closing at a certain frequency, and this frequency is called fundamental frequency. And acoustically we can measure that. We just did, right, with my voice. And acoustically you can measure that with your voice, and we call this perceptually pitch. So pitch is what we perceive. It can be high, it can be low, but it's quite relative. It's more abstract. And finally, we have a linguistic term, and that is tone. Tone signals meaning, and it is based on these two concepts, pitch and fundamental frequency. But like I said, it is always going to be relative. It's not that the tones will correspond to specific frequencies out there. For example, high tone is 250 hertz. No, it's not always like that. It's quite relative. It does not have to be, right? It can be higher, it can be lower. Generally speaking, we refer to range, in which we can find high and low tones, and one of your assignment will be to determine the range of the tones first, and then decide whether the tone is high or low based on the speaker's range. That's something you will do with the tone assignment very, very soon, or you maybe have already done it, but I'm joking, you did not. You will do it, of course. English is not a tone language. It could be sometimes, for one set of words only. Yeah, this is a fun little experiment where you can see how tone can determine meaning in English, but this tone is not what we refer to word property. It's not lexical, it's above that, and we do not consider English a tone language. Yeah, F0, as I said, is when it's linguistic, it's called tone. or something else you'll learn in 441, especially for English, what we use, what we use in sentences or utterances or phrases. And this is one utterance of, oops, very low. So the speaker is saying in different ways. So I'll try to maybe imitate this so that you can hear. So the speaker is saying mm-hmm. 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 Right, something like that. So the speaker is trying to find out what you perceive, how you perceive these. And these utterances can have different meanings in English, of course. They can express sarcasm, they can express sadness, they can express excitement, they can express happiness, and so on and so forth. All of these attitudes and beliefs and states can be expressed with F0, with tone. But English is not a tone language. And why is that so? Well, F0 generally varies in three different ways in language. There are tone languages, there are pitch accent languages, and stress languages. Tone languages are Chinese, Navajo, and Igbo. They are lexically determined. They have lexically determined tone on every syllable or word. So most of the tone languages have words such as horse, mother, hemp, or any other word, or brother, or any other word. And each word in for example, in Chinese will have a specific tone. And not only each word, each syllable will likely have a specific tone, or a tone that is specific for the syllable in that word. There are, of course, tones that determine meaning, just like segments, just like sounds determine meaning. For example, we have words in English such as bit and pit, b and p determine the difference in meaning. In Chinese, Navajo, Igbo, and many other languages, actually the majority of languages in the world, tones are the ones that determine meaning, which means that they would be, for example, you would produce words such as horse, 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 horse. And these would mean different things. Let's say that's the word horse, right? And I'll show you in a second, right? Okay, so these languages have lexically determined tones on every syllable of word. English does not have that. We don't have that kind of contrast that is contrasted only in a tone, whether it's high or low, or rising or falling, or whatever. So English is not that kind of language. Then there are pitch accent languages, which we will go through a little bit today, and I might record a bonus video for you, because I am a speaker of a pitch accent language, and one of these is Serbian. Japanese, Swedish languages are also pitch accent languages. Blackfoot as well is most likely pitch accent language. I think Basque as well, and other languages of the world, but they are in minority, in a great minority, right? So pitch accent languages are the languages that have a certain tonal movement on words, so they have tones, but these tones are not associated with syllables. These tones are associated with words, and they are lexically marked, meaning that that we can differentiate between two words all by this tone, or the difference in tones. But as I said, tones are not present on every syllable, and it's not the usual case that you have tones present on every syllable in pitch accent languages. It's actually, tones can be present in words, and they are superimposed over let's say 2 syllables, maybe even 3 syllables in some cases, and they determine some meanings of the words. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about pitch accents for now. We will introduce them later, but they differ from tone languages in this respect. Stress languages, well, stress languages are English and Russian. Remember examples with contrast, contrast, permit, permit, export, export, and so on and so forth. Stress also determines meaning in languages such as English, but it's complicated. It's something that we will talk about next time. We won't deal with stress today. However, I should just say that F0 takes part in all of these. So in tones, in pitch accents, and in stress, to a certain degree in each one of these. All right, now that we know this typology or this typological division between languages, I want to start with Mandarin. Mandarin Chinese is a classic example of a tone language. Mandarin is spoken in the majority of China, I think, although China has lots of dialects as well. So for Mandarin, we have four tones. Four tones. And each of these tones is superimposed on the word ma, right? So pay attention, we have m and a as two segments and some tone above it, right? So we can say ma in, I don't know, let's say 10 different ways, but in Mandarin tone, this means something actually. So when they produce ma like this,
Ma, ma,
they mean mother. When they produce ma like this,
ma, ma,
they mean hemp. When they produce ma like this,
ma,
they mean horse. When they produce ma like this,
ma.
they mean to scold. And these are the tones which we can hear, hopefully we can hear through these recordings. So tone number 1 is this one,
Ma,
ma, or maybe ma. So do not try to imitate the speaker. Try to find your own range for high, right? This tone is very high, and it should be high. It should remain high all the way through the word. Ma, right? And this tone is a little bit lower in fundamental frequency, and it goes low and then goes up, back a little bit up, right? So
ma, ma,
ma, something like that. And the third one, it's lower, but it goes down abruptly.
ma,
Ma, right? And the fourth one goes from high to low.
ma.
Ma, something like that. So you should find your own range, your own highest range and lowest range, and change your fundamental frequency by controlling your vocal folds. Now that you know the mechanisms behind those, not complete mechanisms because there are so many muscles in there that we can use to control vocal folds, we can perhaps produce these differences or between high and low sounds, right? Okay, so these were the four tones. I'll play them again.
Ma, ma, ma,
And
ma.
superimposed upon the word ma, and they all mean different things. That's why tone is contrastive in language such as Mandarin, right? Okay, and hopefully you can hear the difference. This is a Mandarin sentence. You have to pay attention to how you would say it within a sentence. For example, mother scolds a horse would sound like this.
Mama, mama,
Mama, mama. Something like that.
mama, mama.
Mama, mama. Maybe I'm good, maybe I'm ridiculous. Mandarin speakers will tell me that. They will decide.
Mama, mama.
Oh, this one.
妈妈妈妈
Ma. Yeah, the horse calls mother, which is unusual thing to say, but for the sake of this practice, we can perhaps try and say it, produce it, to see that tones play a crucial role in languages such as Mandarin because they determine the meaning of a word and finally of a sentence, right? I know there are so many derogatory and um, prejudice movies out there that try to ridicule Mandarin, and I don't think they should do that. Of course, we shouldn't. We should know better as linguists, but they represent many of the times miscommunication, right? And that can happen if you are not careful with tones. And I guess that's the most difficult part of learning Chinese, or maybe it's orthography. Who knows? I haven't even tried. All right. Um, yes, so tones are defined by the pattern they make through a speaker's frequency range. The frequency range is usually assumed to encompass 5 levels, 1 to 5, although this can vary depending on the language, right? So here we have the highest range for Mandarin and the lowest range. The highest range for Mandarin, or the highest frequency, is 5. The lowest frequency is 1. And in the middle, or between these two frequencies, there are ranges at around 4, at around 3, at around 2. And again, I have to say these are all relative to each other. There is no specific frequency that I say, okay, this one is 300 hertz. No, it depends on a speaker, and you'll see in a minute, or I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that. So in Mandarin, tones span a frequency range of 1 to 5, right? They are called tone 1, tone 2, tone 3, tone 4. I don't want you to call them like that, so I'll delete this actually. Yeah, no need to do that. What we can use actually are these descriptive numbers and descriptions. Tone number 1, or the one which means mother,
妈
is high level tone. So which means that this 5 is being retained all the way throughout the word, as in here, right? Okay. Now, if you know that, and you know that your frequency range is that high, you can maybe try produce it.
妈
Ma, or ma, for me. Now, 35 is a high rising tone, or not 35, sorry, 3-5. It's better to call it like this. So 5-5, 3-5. 3-5 means that you are in the mid range and you're rising towards the high end of your range. So you would say
妈
ma, something like that,
妈
rising your tone, as if asking, sort of, ma, right? Then this one is allegedly 2-1-4, so you're low, you go even lower for a brief period of second, and high up there to the number 4, or to the range that is below 5, between 5 and 3. So it sounds like this.
妈
Ma. And it goes by very fast. Maybe the speaker cannot even produce 2-1-4 with this short syllable, but in longer words and longer syllables for sure. And finally,
妈
ma. Number 5-1 is a falling tone, or high falling in this case, which means to scold. As we said, in Mandarins, tones span a frequency range 1-5, and we describe them numerically like this. I would like you to know this and to try to describe them by using these numbers. Each tone is denoted by its numerical path through the frequency range. These drawings here are they're called the Chow tone letters. The vertical bar presents the frequency range, so 1 to 5 for each one, and it's the same. But this line that hits the vertical bar, shows you how the tone moves, right? And where it moves, where it starts, where it moves. So it's easy to kind of memorize them like that. All right. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Mandarin tones for now. But and I will repeat again, and I know I have repeated this for many times, but tone is relative, not absolute. Each speaker has a unique frequency range. For example, male is around 20 hertz, the highest frequency, probably, and 100 hertz lowest frequency, probably even lower for myself, definitely 70, 85 maybe. Highest frequency for me, I don't know, maybe 180, something like that. For females, it's around 350, 150 lowest frequency range, but as I said, around. It can differ from person to person. What I want to say is that 350 for a female would be maybe number 5, right? But 200 hertz for a male would be number 5 as well. So you would have the same tone with a different value of F0 or fundamental frequency. And relativity in reality, it looks like this. The same tones may be denoted by completely different frequencies depending on the speaker. Tone is an abstract linguistic unit, in which we already established, because it changes the meaning of a word and it's quite relative. What we can measure and what we can do to help us determine which tone we have just heard or which tone we have just produced is the fundamental frequency. So this is a tone, ma, tone 1, which means mother, produced by a female speaker
妈
and a male speaker.
妈妈
Obviously, male speaker has a lower, higher range, right, than a female speaker. But the tone is one and the same thing. So the tone is one, although they have different F0s. And that's why we say tone is abstract, right? How to transcribe tone? Well, for male speaker, this tone is going down, right?
妈
And that's tone 5-1.
妈
For female speaker, it's also going down, but the range from the highest point to the lowest point, something here, I guess, right, is really broad, right? It's really wide range, right? Wide. So we get, I don't know, let's say 250 maybe to what's this? Maybe 150 or maybe 120. Okay. And for a male speaker, I'll use green. This is the peak, and the range is this big. For example, you see even in the lines are different in length. It's quite narrow or narrower. I wouldn't say narrow per se, rather narrower. And it's between 100 and I don't know 40, let's say, to what's this, 80. Okay. So the range is around 140 minus 80. For a male speaker, it would be how much? 60. And for a female speaker, it would be 130, which is double, right? Double the male amount. And these numbers are just my guesses, but you can definitely see that there is a difference. All right, some speakers also use more of their frequency range. We established that with a female speaker, and that's what you need to do to check out the frequency range of a person what's the highest for their tone and what's the lowest for their production of tone, and what's the highest for male, what's the lowest for male speaker. That's how you will know whether the male speaker produced high tone or a low tone in certain circumstances, or somewhere, or they were somewhere in the middle, and their movement denoted another tone, right? Okay, here I would like to draw a distinction between level tones and contour tones. Okay, level tones are the tones which do not change, meaning that if they start at 3, they will continue towards the end and remain at this level, and that's why they're called level tone. There are 3 level tones in Cantonese: high level, mid level, low level. There are 3 contour tones in Cantonese: low falling, high falling, low falling, low high, and low mid. And these change their movement. Their trajectory is changed throughout the tone. So what we have essentially is the Cantonese with 6 tones, and sometimes Cantonese speakers brag about that because they have more tones than Mandarin speakers, right? Cantonese is spoken somewhere in Hong Kong, and the majority of speakers speak Mandarin, I think. And what's important about the difference between Cantonese and Mandarin is that they are not intelligible, not mutually intelligible always. They are similar, but really not so much, and they cannot understand each other always. Even though they are using the same Chinese characters for writing in orthography, they cannot understand each other when they are speaking. So, and we still call it one language. So that's why it's important to know that Cantonese and Mandarin are different languages, right? And let's hear these tones. So first we will listen to these level tones.
C, C, C,
And then we will listen to contour tones.
C, C, C.
All right, so level tones do not change their trajectory. Let's listen to this one.
C,
And this one.
C.
Yeah, so you can hear that there is a little bit of change to 2-1, 2-4, 2-3. 2-4 and 2-3 are becoming, with younger generations, quite merged. So they have a merger there, just like Canadians have a merger with Don and Don, right? I remember Canadians having merger in this respect. So we have
C, C.
yeah, these two, which are very similar, and you can almost you can hear some difference, but it's difficult.
C, C.
Yeah. All right, you can check them out and try to sing along. But these are the Cantonese tones, and there are 2 groups of tones: level and contour tones, right? All right, now I have been asked by my friend and colleague, also PhD student, Kang Shu, how do we know that a certain tone bears the highest tone value in a certain language? He also asked, like, do we measure the average tone value of numerous lexical items first and then divide these tone range into 5 different categories? Well, the answer, it's complicated. So maybe I'll do the slideshow here. So it's complicated. First, we record the contrasting items, and it's important to stress or emphasize that these are contrasting items, such as ma, right? We also record lots of words, right, if we don't know the language, but you want the contrasting items because they express certain meaning, and there you can see the difference between the tones more clearly, right? Then we measure the average ranges for male and female speakers, of course. We graph the average movement of F0 for each word, and we compare. I think I have a graph somewhere here, maybe. Okay, let me try and open this one. All right, here it is. So we graph the average movement of F0 for each word. Sorry about that. This is, for example, tone 1, tone 2, tone 3, tone 4, and we record lots of these, right? Lots of these, as many as we can. And we let's say do the average or calculate the average for male, female. This one is obviously female, I think, or it can be male, right? But I think it's female still. I think it's female for sure. And we graph them, right? So many of these. If we have so many measurements, then maybe another speaker would produce this tone like this, right? Another speaker would produce this tone like this. Something like that. Anyways, what we do, or what we want to do, is graph the average one, right? And then go from there, compare and contrast. So we basically try to compare these contrasting items. If we see a consistency between ma as in horse and ma as in mother, and we see that the majority of speakers are producing this with this tone, then we say, okay, well, that's the tone that we want. Now we also divide the areas into 5 areas in this case. I'm just going to, like, how many I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. Let's say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We divide them into the areas, and we approximately deduce which tones have been produced. I maybe went too low here, but let's say that maybe Mandarin doesn't need any more 5 areas, maybe 4 would be enough, but still, based on the majority of speakers and what they're doing, we divide the ranges, right? And I'm sure researchers have done that much more systematically than I'm explaining right now. Based on those measurements and averages, we compare and determine which what's the tone on this item across the majority of speaker, what's the tone for this item across majority of speaker, and so on so forth. And we check those assumptions, so we go back and record more, right? That's the how science works. So it's complicated. For each language is different. Many languages don't have this many options and this many ranges. In fact, I think that most of languages have 3 to 5 tones, and these are not as complex as Cantonese tones, but still we make certain assumptions from language to language. It's not always the same and constant, right? That's why it's complicated. But thank you for your question, Kang. And I hope this will help the students as well. Right. Other tone languages only have 2 or 3 tone targets. Those are transcribed as sequences of high and low tones, also mid-tones. They can be labeled in IPA with accents over vowels. This one is called acute accent. This one is called low or grave accent. And if we are maybe using the mid-tone, we will have this one above the tone. For example, I don't know, right? Mid-tone. This one would be high, and this one would be low, right? Acute, grave, and line, right? Which will be mid. You use this one for stress, but do not use it for stress anymore. So we won't use it for stress now that we are much smarter, that we are much more advanced. We have a stress diacritic. We will use this one for tones, right? Okay. In these languages, tone can be used for grammatical markers. such as tense and possession. So in Mandarin and Cantonese, we mostly use tones for distinguishing between words. This word means poem, this word means to try, and so on and so forth. But in Ibibio tones, which is Ibibio is spoken in southern Nigeria, we use these tones for expressing high and low tones, which means something else, right? So yeah, for this one, actually, let me see.
Akbar,
Yeah, this means the expanse of ocean. This means
Akbar,
whereby this is a high tone,
Akbar, Akbar,
and they have this velar openings like pa pa pa, right?
Akbar,
This one is falling.
Akbar,
Oh, I think in a language called Edo, also African language, there are different there are tones that denote certain grammatical structures, such as tense or possession, such as plurality, for example. When you want to say two horses, let's say, you would say ma and ma. This is not the case in Mandarin, but in other languages, right? And in Bibio, there are three way division of tones, so high, falling, and low. And I'll play them all right now, and you can sing along. So this is high,
Akbar, Akbar,
this is falling,
Akbar, Akbar,
and low.
Aku, Akbar,
You can see for falling that there's diacritic here, like a hat, top hat, which denotes that tone is moving from high to low, right? From high to low. All right, these are also lexical, so these were not grammatical. Maybe I'll show you lexical in the next lecture, but or maybe I'll show you grammatical tones in the next lecture, but these ones are they just denote difference in meaning of words. Okay, I want to briefly walk you through pitch accent languages. The difference between a pitch accent and the tone is that pitch accent is realized on only one syllable in the word, and that I can bold it, right? The other syllables in the word can have no accent. Accent is lexically determined, so there can be minimal pairs. And don't confuse this accent with, accents around the world, because pitch accent is just a property, suprasegmental property of words in languages such as Japanese, Swedish, Serbian, and so on and so forth. Japanese is a pitch accent language for some, but not all words, for some, but not all dialects. So, which you cannot basically find in Mandarin or Cantonese. There are tones all over the place, and in Japanese, there are words that have one high accent, and it attaches to one mora in the word. I'll explain what mora is, but basically there are accented dialects and unaccented dialects in Japanese. Tokyo dialect is accented. It has pitch accents whereby they only have one high accent, and the rest are by default low or F0, whereby they have low F0, right? So they're low accents. So Japanese attaches to one mora in the word. Mora is a vowel or consonant following a vowel within a syllable. For example, in Japanese, there is a word ni, which means two. It has one mora, and that's this syllable, or that's this vowel. This is the nucleus of the syllable. This is the vowel carrying the whole syllable. And if there is some kind of a coda here, or a consonant in a coda position, then this one represents another mora. So consonant in a coda position, which we will talk about maybe next time, is this one, n, and therefore we have two moras, or two metric units, right? Simplistically, or in simple terms, mora is a vowel or a consonant following a vowel, right? That's how you should remember it, but it's actually some kind of a metric unit and a tone-bearing unit. In our case, it is a pitch accent bearing unit. It bears some pitch accent. The first mora, if not accented, has a low F0. So let's say this mora, I guess it is accented. But if it would not be, if it were not accented, then n would be a high, and this mora would carry a low F0 by default, right? So we need some kind of contrast. Mora following the accent have low F0. So any mora that follows the accent, like for example n here, will have low F0, and we will have HL, or yeah, I can say HL or HL in this case. Maybe like this. High low tone, right? Probably that's the case. But let's see. Yeah, I forgot to mention that we took these examples from this website, which I'm not sure it works, but there's so much research on Japanese pitch accents out there. Kubozono is one of the prominent authors. Ito, Mester, and Ota. Yeah, these are all. If you want to find out more about them, just let me know. But there's so much research on Japanese pitch accents, which is nice, which is great, because we have to know more. So these are the two words in Japanese: asa, morning, and again hemp for some reason. Here.
Asa.
So here the accent is on the first
Asa.
mora, and here the accent is on the second mora.
Asa.
So H, the first mora here, is accented. Asa. And you can see here the pitch track or the F0 track. So everything that we say that for these pitch accents, which are abstract units, linguistic units, we can show in a spectrogram. Most of the time they correspond to each other. So this high, this low, right? Or this low, this high, right? And you can clearly hear the difference between the two.
Asa.
Right? Then there is a three-way division. Hashin. Yeah, that's a popular one. Whereby chopsticks, this means chopsticks. This one means bridge. Hashi. Hashina. There is a little bit of this engma here that you can really hear in this word, because these are quite stressed moras or accented moras. Here we have middle mora, which carries or bears high tone. We have a low mora afterwards and before it, and finally here we have high mora on the first vowel. So I would assume that, knowing how Japanese syllables work, this a would be carrier, this e would be carrier, and here e and a would be carriers probably. Maybe we can listen to them again, and bear in mind, in these languages, in pitch accent languages, pitch accents are contrastive. So we have the same segments, same set of h, a, sh, i, n, right? But the superimposed tonality gives them a different meaning.
Hashin.
Right? Hashi, right? Hashina, right? Here, I guess this is some kind of a morphological ending. I'm not sure, that has to be produced in order to bear a tone, a high tone. And you can see all of these on these little displays of a pitch track. Right. Okay, so that was a pitch accent, and I would like to finally go through length. Another suprasegmental linguistic feature is quantity. So linguistically we call length quantity. Perceptually we call it length, and acoustically we call it duration. Quantity distinctions are also relative. They depend on speaker, they depend on speaking rate. For example, as a non-native speaker of English, I'm probably speaking slower in most of the time, but you have YouTube to speed it up if you want. Some speakers speak much faster than I do. Some speakers speak slower. That's their way of speaking. But generally, you have to pay attention to these distinctions in languages such as Danish. Danish has lots of vowels, and we will go through all of these, and you try to repeat to feel and sense the length. So this is
Ved,
vid,
ved,
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 hvad,
väda, right? Now we will go through wild,
ville,
ville,
hvile,
ville,
minde,
mene.
mene,
Yeah, you can feel the difference, right?
minde, mene,
Hear the difference actually.
læse, læse, masse, masse,
Right. So, especially between these pairs, right? Ville, ville, right? And here, for example, for lesa, lesa, this one sounds maybe has this quality of A in English because you have to sustain the voicing throughout the whole vowel, and it's a long vowel. It's longer than this one, this epsilon. So the quality also changes a little bit, but you have to pay attention to this distinction in these languages because they change the meaning. And if you don't, you might encounter some kind of miscommunication. In English, for example, you don't have this case. So you have ash, for example, and epsilon, right? Massa, lassa, right? Ash is by default a little bit longer than e or epsilon because of its nature, right? Of its quality. But here the duration is quite distinct, and we can see that on these two waveforms. So this one is 150 milliseconds and this one is 275 milliseconds. Let's hear them out.
læse,
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 læse, right? So you can clearly hear the difference in
læse,
duration or
Læse.
quantity. Yeah, so differences in quantity between segments translates to relative differences in duration. And we say relative again because this is not always the case that the vowel is long 275 milliseconds or 150 milliseconds. No. In fact, it can be around 200, 250, 300 maybe, I don't know. It's just that this is consistently happening throughout all of these examples with the majority of speakers, and the majority of speakers are producing a read in Danish longer than load, right? Or this vowel at least, and that's how we know, right? It's all relative again with suprasegmentals. And finally, I would like to finish finish this lecture, this long lecture with Italian. Italian contrasts both long and short vowels and consonants, so it has difference in length in consonants and vowels. This one, Italian has also both palatal, nasal palatals and palatal laterals, right? This one is produced something like li, right? Like you're producing y and l at the same time, li. So let's see the distinction.
li,
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 li, right? Now this is a long vowel, and here it's a long vowel, but we want to show distinction between the n and ny.
nomi,
Nomi,
gnomi,
gnomi. Then here we have a long l and long l.
folla,
Folla, as if you don't want to complete this l. Folla, right? I'm exaggerating now. Or foglia.
foglia,
Foglia. Yeah, there is a little bit of e flavor there. Foglia, because you're trying to go from l to a right away. Nonno,
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 sogno,
sogno, And now distinction between long and short and long.
velare,
Velare,
vegliare,
vegliare. Right, as if you don't want to stop producing these consonants. That's how they sound. So yeah, this is pretty common in languages. Italian, Danish do this, Finnish, Hungarian, right? Other languages as well. They have distinction in quantity, linguistic distinction in quantity, but acoustic distinction in length. And that's important to remember. Next time we will talk about stress. Next time we will talk about intensity as well. I'm looking forward to those lessons, and I'm looking forward to talk about suprasegmentals more. I might even record some video for you on pitch accents, on Serbian pitch accents. That would be a bonus video. You don't have to focus on it so much. But these are the suprasegmentals, and they are relate very closely to F0. F0 is present in all of them. Duration as well, so pay attention to the duration of the vowels and consonants, and know that these are all relative. I know that's why they are the most difficult ones to research after all, and many people shy away from researching them. Dr. Steven Winters and we do not. We like researching them because they are relative and quite exciting for us to find out more about them. All right, thank you, and looking forward to seeing you soon.